Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Quantum Connection Roundtable. I am Lauren Bradley here with my co-host Kelly Erickson. And today, Kelly and I are very excited to be joined by our guest, Harmanjot. Harmanjot found Kundalini Yoga in 2008, a bundle of stress, anxiety, and low self-esteem. Her vinyasa practice was the only thing that had made her feel calm and regulated. When she took her first Kundalini yoga class, the positive benefits felt like they had increased by 100-fold. She knew she wanted to learn more and share these practices with others. From this time to 2021, she was instrumental in opening and growing the three Rama Institutes, Los Angeles, New York, Palma de Mallorca, working side by side with the founder, Guru Jagat. Harmanjot was responsible for developing and creating programming and strategically building Rama into the juggernaut of spiritual consciousness that it became. With the passing of Guru Jagat, Harmanjot began to spearhead a new direction of bridging the sacred and the secular worlds. Harmanjot has partnered with top brands to teach yoga and meditation. She is contracted with L'Oreal USA as an astrologer and their corporate team. For her client list, which includes everyone from Academy Award winners to university students to single working moms, Harmanjot offers yoga courses, private classes, and various levels of astrology readings, which are awesome, by the way. Harmanjot Harmanjot's aim is to bring the sacred into the everyday. To that end, she is committed to carrying the teachings of Kundalini Yoga with fidelity and modernism, empowering individuals from all walks of life, expanding magic in the world, and living with creative irreverence. Kundalini is a yogic science and spiritual technology originating from the ancient land of the Vedas, focusing on the awakening of Kundalini, a dormant energy located at the base of the spine. It emphasizes the activation and ascent of this energy through the seven chakras or energy centers of the body, which corresponds to nerve plexuses and the circulation of the cerebral spinal fluid within the spinal column. This transformational system is designed to release blocks to untapped reservoirs of energy, balance the glandular system, and revitalize the nervous system. By building, clearing, and balancing the subtle systems of the nadis, which are energy channels, and chakras, it stimulates mental, physical, and spiritual health. Practices include breath work, pranayama, meditation, chanting, which are mantras, physical postures, which are asanas, hydrotherapy, and cleansing techniques, which are kriyas. These methods work together to promote clarity, integrating perception, thought, and intuition for optimal functioning and well-being. And I want to start with a quote from Yogi Bhajan. The Kundalini is known as the nerve of the soul. This is to be awakened. Your soul is to be awakened. When soul gets awakened, there remains nothing. If your soul is awakened, what else do you need? So today we're going to talk and dive deep into the technology and yogic science that is Kundalini. So to start with, Harmanjot, do you want to, of course, I just sort of laid out the groundwork, but build upon that and kind of open up the conversation as to the science and the technology of like, what are we doing here? When we're doing yoga, it's kind of like, I would say, I always call it, it's like the snout to tail version of yoga practices where, sometimes vinyasa is just like eating the meat,
Right.
where yoga, Kundalini is like, it's more of like a 360 of total enmeshment of mind, body, soul, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's a great analogy. And I will expand upon it and sort of break it down a little bit. First things first, I'm just trying to find my place with the vinyasa. Every yoga practice. So yoga, let's start the fundamentals here. Yoga is is a term for any practice that gives you an unbreakable link with your own infinity.
Mm,
And this is like existential,
mm,
it's like, what are we doing here on Earth? And then there's like so many like literature upon literature around like what we're doing, the meaning of life, and what we're doing here. And there's certainly quite a number of cultures and texts that are in some level of agreement that the purpose of life is actually it's kind of like a ride. It's kind of like a Six Flags ride but the ride is called infinity, but inside of a physical body. Because when you have glands and nerves and hormones, it's like drugs. And then when you're running the infinite template through your glandular nervous system self-manufactured drug experience, the high you get from being inside the infinite is the best high you could ever get. And so the only thing to do with your time is just go infinite because it's so good. And if you spend your 80, 70, 60, 90, maybe you're one of those people who's living to 120 this time or 150. If you spend those years, that century and a half in infinity, you're gonna be like, "Yes!" But what happens is most people get born, kinda like are woken up in this weird, kind of unfortunate family structure, get programmed in a certain way, and then bumble around in their 20s and 30s, and then in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, just live the rest of their life in misery, and then they die.
mm,
And so yoga is anything, any practice at all, marriage, sex, food, breathing, walking, any practice that gets you real super synced up and linked up, tightly interwoven with the divine. And then we have this body of practices that came to the West, actually starting in the late 1800s is when yoga started to infiltrate into the United States at the very least, and maybe into Europe, into England a little bit earlier than that. But in the US, sort of late 1800s, and then the big whoosh, big opening during the 60s and 70s, we have this body of physical practices that work really, really, really well. I mean, incredibly well to sort of just stretch your body and coordinate your glandular system and clarify your mind and get you back into resonance with yourself and the universe. And the thing is that the weirdly, I mean, I love how open-minded the West is in some ways, and then in some ways it's like a very can be very closed-minded. So people couldn't really grasp. It didn't feel like it was moving fast enough, sort of the spiritual revolution around like you don't have to worry about, pleasing an angry God. Just get in line with the universe. It's totally cool. Like there is no angry God. That's a lie. They told you. They were trying to manipulate you. So people couldn't quite catch on to that, but they caught on to like skinny. And they got on to fitness. And so all of a sudden you have this amazing practice, hatha yoga, vinyasa yoga, but it ended up sort of it's not bad. I mean, it worked for me for years and was the only thing that worked. But it was just it's more like, look, I gotta de-stress. I have anxiety. I gotta de-stress and I want to be fit. And so that's sort of like what got kept in sort of the memology, what, cultural relics that got kept through vinyasa. And then here comes this lineage of Kundalini Yoga that is now like under a lot of controversy. But let's just be clear, the way that it was set up is that it's actually really difficult to dilute it. It's actually very, very like it's hard to take Kundalini yoga and then sort of piecemeal it. It almost just it doesn't get past that way. So we have this more complete system that's working your biology, your physiology, and then your electrical system, and therefore then working your spirit body in a different way. And it's very mechanistic.
Yeah.
This is why I like it, because it's actually not hoodly-hoo, and you don't have to believe anything, and you don't have to come with any faith. If you just if you breathe in this way and you move your body in this way, you're gonna adjust the chakras. You're gonna have a visceral experience of it too. So it's not like me, planting the idea in your brain. You feel it, and you're gonna learn how to like drive a car. You're gonna learn how to work your system in a really exquisite way, and you're gonna have a choose your own adventure experience. And I would imagine if you're choosing your own adventure, you're not choosing the misery program.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the mechanisms of the technology are so interesting in terms of the crossover to quantum biology. And Kelly and I have been really, as we expand the lens on quantum biology, we're like, oh, Kundalini is included in this for sure. Like this is part of the daily habits to access the total body system, like you were saying. And it's interesting, there's like scientific things that we talk about, and then when you practice yoga, you're like, oh wow, I'm accessing science here. That's what I'm doing,
Experiencing.
experiencing and accessing science. One thing I find really interesting, and just to like nerd out and get scientific, is the HIF1, Kelly, the HIF1. So HIF1, I just want to like say, so it's a paradox of a protein that helps the body adapt to low oxygen by improving energy production, blood flow, and cell survival. But it's paradoxical because you could have a HIF1 problem if you continuously have sleep apnea, right? You give yourself hypoxia by losing your oxygen in your sleep, or something that's chronic. But then you can use the HIF1, you can utilize that hypoxia for uh like a clearing, like for longevity and enhancement. And that actually is what we do with breath of fire.
I'm super fascinated by that because when you say that, I also think about like what you find in Kundalini yoga, which you definitely do not find in other yoga practices these days, is definitely lots of different kind of breathing patterns, and especially a lot of holding the breath out or in
Yeah.
for extended times to the point where you're like, should I be breathing? Like we're still holding the breath. And then the yogic teaching is that when you hold the breath in or out, but mostly this is about out, holding it out, that the body thinks it's going to die. And so it goes into automatic reorganization, and it optimizes your energy usage. So when you're saying the HIF1 is optimizing mitochondrial, and I don't know if you said mitochondrial, but that's what I heard, the energy production when you're in low oxygen levels, that is what you do when you artificially trigger it for the purposes of creating better energy when you hold the breath out during yoga.
And
Yeah.
Lauren, the guy that Lauren is referring to that has put forward the research on HIF1, his name's Joel Green, but that's exactly what he talks about is during, particular exercises, holding your breath and then extending your breath as a form of clearing out these HIF1 components or creating the HIF1 components. So it is exactly what you're talking about there.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
fascinating.
And then the geometry. So you're working geometry. Can you explain more of that? Harmanjot? Like
Sure.
how do the different geometric angles scientifically work with your biosystem?
Totally. Well, and this is definitely in the Kundalini Yoga teachings, but this is something that I really latched onto and expanded. It's not something you'll find in every Kundalini Yoga class, unless that particular person is into geometry. It's there, but like you got to be into it to want to keep talking about it. So, this is I'm sorry, I'm like trying to find it. I'm trying to find it for myself here. I'm trying to find the right inroad because there's like so many inroads firing at once. I I don't know when this started. I think it started a few years into Kundalini Yoga that I talk about this sometimes in my classes. Like, I'm a nerd, like this, what I do for fun. Like, I've got kids, like, we go surfing, I like shopping, I'm a normal person. I do normal things for fun, but also the truth of my being is what's really fun to me is super, super sensory activity. So actually just breathing is fun for me. My husband and I went on vacation, and we had a late overlay in Denmark, and we were in a hotel room, and we were like, let's watch a movie. And then we were like, let's meditate. Like, we actually have fun this way. This is, but that's just how nerdy we are. But one of the things that I personally enjoy is you can take the geometry of all things work geometrically. All things work geometrically. Everything is a geometric signature. And especially when we're talking about electrical broadcast from the DNA, from the cells, from the molecules, there's a geometric broadcast to calcium. There's a geometric broadcast to magnesium. We were talking about this yesterday. There's a geometric broadcast to gold. I love to feel the different geometries interplay with my system. And I also love to activate my own DNA and express the intrinsic geometry in my own being. I actually think that's like fun for me. Now, I know that's not fun for everybody. Most people are just trying to get healthy and like clear their mind, open their heart, have better relationships, make some money, and die with a smile on their face. But I do think there's this growing population, and especially, people who are have awareness of this and that are sensory to it. And then, of course, the children who are very, very sensory, who, it's more entertaining to play with subtlety than it is to like overdose on sugar and I don't know, kill people in video games. And not downing that if that's your pastime. Seriously, I am pro everybody. I just, I do think that we're moving into a time of much more sensitivity, and we've been in a much more like dense time.
Yeah, I think that like when you start to adhere to the light codes and you start to say, oh, wow, I want to get sunrise in proper order. And then I want to get sunset. And then I want to like work with my fuel system and I want to get healthy. Then you get into the more advanced, what you just explained, where you're starting to understand your sensorial geometric place in the bidirectional universe. And then it becomes like, oh, I'm floating in a sea of light and sound and harmonics and what is this, right? And so it's like I think that you're right that people do want to expand their experience from the consumer place and get into understanding what that cyclic relationship is instead of just it's just one way. I'm just consuming, and you're not
Well, and I
a
just
spiral.
feel that uh, we love experience, and the chemical factory of your own body is insane. It is outrageous and unparalleled by anything you can buy on the public or black market. Like you just get way and you get way more high working with your own glandular system than you do, you know, with opiates.
I have a question for you, talking about the geometry and how you like to experience it. What started to go through my head is perception. I work a lot with emotions and feelings and how we experience them based on our perceptions and the narratives we have in our head, right? And I was thinking how most people navigate, not most people, but a lot of people navigate the world without this concept that everything around us, my TV, the computer screen, everything that is around me right now is playing part of my perception. It's feedback into the system, and I am also feedback into the system around me. So, can you kind of bridge that idea or that concept and how this plays into the geometric kind of reality of things?
Yes, so this is also something that I just love. That is um your brain, the neurons. Actually, this is actually where we should have just got here though. I'm proud of us. Your brain works on a geometric template system. The neurons create geometric, what I call geomancy. And so when you listen to, a great example would be classical music. So when you listen to classical music, your neurons have to fire in a particular pattern in order for you to even cognitively comprehend that what you're listening to have to comprehend the sounds, to cognize these sounds. And that's a particular geometric pattern. It's a different geometric pattern when you are listening to hip hop. It's a different geometric pattern when you're listening to, because I actually love hip hop, but it's a different geometric pattern than when you're listening to, like, I don't know, what do I not love? I don't love saccharine pop music, but I actually do because I love Jessica Simpson. Okay, take it back. It's just a different pattern because I love experience. I just love it. I'm like, I love being alive. So it's a different geometric pattern. It's the same thing with visuals. And this is something I just really geek out about. And because I think, so, enlightening visuals are very, very important. In the old days, um, your pineal gland, let me rewind. Your pineal gland is most affected by light and shape. As you guys know, because you're getting the sunlights and the sun codes, light and shape really affect the secretion rate of your pineal gland. And the higher frequency rate of pineal secretion, the more the crown chakra opens and the more you're able to get those cosmic downloads. So when we are, I live in a city, and I live in a nice, like, quiet, enclave of the city. But when you go into West Hollywood, it's surround sound billboard. And so you're getting a bunch of shapes, light, because it's colors, sometimes it's lit up, that is programming your pineal gland to secrete in a certain pattern and your neurons to take a certain shape. These shapes are just what they are. They're not really geared to open up your crown chakra and make you feel one with, galactic center. For the most part, they're geared to close it down so that you're like, well, this is all there is. I guess I better just go buy that designer bag. And I mean, again, I love designer bags. I just, like, we're just talking about how the mechanics here, the mechanics. And so it's the same thing with the TV screen, the computer screen, the phone, all of these vibratory patterns create unique geometric patterns in your neurology. That's the science of advertising, and it's also the science of ritual.
And so I like the way that you explain this so that it really makes sense. And so what I'm gathering from what you're saying is that by practicing Kundalini, you're actually expanding or unlocking your perception or kind of unfiltering your perception and expanding your level of consciousness because perception plays a massive role in how conscious or unconscious we are.
Yeah, so the language I would use around that, and there's two things I want to say to that around what you're actually doing with Kundalini. But the what I didn't finish saying and what you said, but I'll say it in this language too, is that the science of experience per the yogis works like this. You have this electromagnetic field called an aura, or the yogis call it an aura, but science just calls it an electromagnetic field. It's very well documented. Most humans have, are like, I can't remember the actual number, but it's like most humans are at like 30 watts, and like some humans are at like at 100 watts. And you can, if you put a telescope on the moon and it's strong enough, you could pick up the human energy field. It's a known thing. So the first thing, because the universe is electromagnetic, the first thing that happens is there's all this like data in the world, vibrational data, and it hits your electromagnetic field. And once it hits your electromagnetic field, it sends a signal to your nervous system. Your nervous system secretes hormones, or your nervous system sends the signal to secrete some hormones, and then your brain cognizes it and tells a story based on the patterns it has most available to it because of the way that it's been, the neurons have been programmed by the music or the media. So we're talking about stories and perceptions and things like that. Same thing, it can happen like you get a visual, the neurons pattern, the hormones secrete based on that pattern. Then you tell a story about those hormones. Oh, I feel sad. Oh, I feel cranky. Or, oh my God, I'm happy. You know, the way that I see Kundalini Yoga working is two ways. So it definitely unlocks what the yogis call the third eye. And for a long time, I didn't really resonate with that language, open your third eye. But recently I was like, no, that's really the first place you start because that does give you a deeper perceptive clarity. So it does open up the perception of that third eye space. Um, it makes you more sensitive and aware and able to even recognize different kinds of sensations. So you're like, oh, I've never felt, this is one of the reasons why I got really into it because I thought like, oh, you're supposed to just love people, but what if you don't know love? What if you've never felt love before? Well, if you do this heart chakra opening, it's going to feel brand new, but you're going to feel that it'll open up those frequencies. And then so it does some clarifying so you can clear your perception, but also yoga does programming. And I'm not against that. It programs you with different kinds of symbols that are more resonant with the galaxies, with free energy, with love for all, with prosperity for all. I've been really, and again, this is in the yogic teachings, but I have to say, just so that no one gets confused, like what's yoga and what's Harmanjot's personal, joy. Um, I've been really into galactic history and galactic civilizations. And on other planets, they have prosperity for all, and it's not a big deal. On other planets, everybody's high status, everybody's universal monarch, and it's not a big deal. We are in a weird sort of position where, like, in order for somebody to be prosperous, we have to step on somebody else. And the yogic technologies are actually free energy technologies that prove we can just like all be prosperous. We can all be beautiful. We can all have it all. Nobody has to be lesser or worse. All is one, man.
Yes, I think that's what the goal of like quantum biology, it's to reclaim your energy and get to free energy. So we're working on becoming a type 1 civilization because we are not in control of our energy yet. So we're not there collectively, but we're also not there in terms of our own bodies. We're not in control of our mitochondrial energy, right? So when we take hold of our mitochondrial energy through various optimization techniques that we're learning and expanding and connecting, then we can have access to that free energy. And free energy doesn't exist outside of us. It has to start from within first. It has to start from your mitochondria first and foremost. Wrangle your energy so you can utilize all your energy, and then we can work on the planetary aspect of it and move into a type 1 civilization and beyond, where we do have access to our energy. It's not being siphoned by pathogens or like whatever, right?
Yeah, whatever.
On all levels, on
Yeah.
all levels. So Kundalini does give you access to those programs that then pair with your optimization techniques. This is why I think that it's kind of not optional or not, or it pairs
Yeah.
pairs
I mean,
nice.
yeah. Sorry, you finish.
As you're optimizing your energetic mitochondrial systems through light, through all sorts of techniques, then you can work with those geometric patterns, those programs that program the sensorial, because mitochondria are sensors, programming the sensorial experience in that sort of like very nicely paired way, and it is in the biology of our nervous systems.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to a lot of what you just said, or you also, I don't want to like just keep talking if you guys have other questions just about the mitochondria and the
Wow.
system, but
Yeah,
yeah.
no, go on to
Okay.
what.
I also feel like I feel like it would be good to get into some of the specifics of the tech. It can be hard sometimes, and also like I don't really have the same language as both you and Kelly, and so but I want to, show the crossovers. So you feed me stuff and I'll jump on it. But
So maybe talk about like cerebral spinal fluid and like what's actually happening. And we I I first and foremost understand it more from the esoteric or the energetic, and then I've had to like walk it back and understand it through the science. Like it's raw sexual energy, it's raw creative energy, but it also is like, the technique of Kundalini is to work with your cerebral spinal fluid, correct?
totally. So yeah, I'm gonna address that. I want to address the mitochondria, and I actually want to build on the geometry a little bit more. So like Kundalini Yoga itself is a really complete package, and I don't want to like totally break it down into component by component because there's amazing things that happen in holotropic breath work. Um, but Kundalini Yoga is very different, and I feel like leagues beyond it in a certain way. That I mean, that's them's fighting words, to holotropic breath teacher, but I'm just saying what I'm saying. We can have a debate later. Um, but that said, the breath work and the mantras are very, very powerful for first starting to clear the debris from the cell. So the cell gets really from my understanding of things, from my, entry point into this world, the cell gets really heavily impacted by environmental pollutants, toxins in the food systems, fake foods, any kinds of like over-the-counter residues or recreational residues. The cell gets really impacted. And so when the cell is impacted in that way, one, it's not very sensory, it can't feel things. Two, it can't broadcast as well. And three, it can't produce its energy. So the breath work and the mantras both work in a very subatomic way to clear the debris off the cell. And it does this by both of those tools, mantra and breath work, both utilize electrical energy. When you do breath work, you get prana. Prana is not oxygen. There's actually, little electrons on the air. And when you breathe, the cilia, the hair in your nose and in your throat and in your lungs, um, bifurcates the oxygen molecule, runs it through your bloodstream. So obviously the oxygen molecule goes through all the tissues and picks up all the toxins and dumps it, on the exhale and through the lymph and so forth. But then it also bifurcates the electrical molecule, the hairs do, the cilia, and runs that through your system as well. So the breath work and the mantras have a lot of electricity in them too. So the mantras and the breath work both work to move the debris off the cell so that it can feel things, it can broadcast, and it can generate more energy. It can reclaim the mitochondria. And so then we get into, then we get into the yoga, the posture of it all. And the posture part, the yogic, we work with complete yogic sets called yoga kriyas. Yoga kriyas are not necessarily invented by Yogi Bhajan. These are packages of body movements that have been passed down for thousands of years, that are known to move the energy in a certain way to open up a maximum flow of the cerebral spinal fluid. And a great example of this would be actually the Bikram set. The reason why people love Bikram so much is, yeah, it's great, it's hot, it's wonderful. It's actually a complete Kriya. It's not like, you know, a vinyasa teacher being like, I'm going to combine Surya Namaskara A with half moon pose, which is also great, but lacks electrical integrity in order to open up the Shushmana channel, which is the central spinal column, effectively to run the cerebral spinal fluid up the spine. There's two things that happen when the Kundalini rises. One, it is biological, so you get that cerebral spinal fluid going up, conditioning the bundle of nerves in your spine, going up into the top, and then conditioning the whole cerebellum. So the whole entire brain gets a bathing and a conditioning and a suppleness, which keeps your mind flexible. So we have a great example in the West also of like, Peter Pan syndrome. Everybody wants to be young forever. The yogis also want to be young forever, not at the expense of spiritual maturity. The way that you stay young is you have to keep that brain plastic. The only way to keep the brain plastic is to get that cerebral spinal fluid up the spine. How do you do that? Man, I don't know any other way except for yoga. And then at the same time, etherically, in the etheric channels, you're running the Kundalini, which is then going up the spine, opening up the chakras, going into the third eye and the crown, like connecting you with infinity, and you go into ecstasy, man. And then you decide, you know what, you're like, I like monoatomic gold. That's a template that's super fun for me to play on planet Earth. Or I like spicy foods. That's a template that I enjoy running in my mouth and in my cellular system. Or you're like, you know what? I actually don't like the template of my husband thinks he's like, you're a sugar addict. That is not true. I like sweets, but I actually don't like sugar. I don't like the template. But that's not something I had to like fight. I never like got off of sugar. I never went on a sugar. I mean, I wish I did years ago, but I never did that. I never had to fight my way out of a habit. I just kept opening up my sensory system more and more and more. And then certain things I just like, oh, I don't like that. I don't yell at my kids, not because I'm a nice mom. I actually just don't like yelling at them. It's not that fun.
Mhm.
I only yell at them if they're not listening. I'm not trying to be peaceful because it's the right thing to do. I just don't like being aggressive. It's a
It,
totally different way to
yeah.
flicker.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Lauren and I had talked about this before, that as you embark on any journey back to a state of wholeness, um, the molecules are quite literally being rearranged. And so as you say, the template changes. That's kind of what I envision. And we have a micro scale and a macro scale. And so the template is quite literally being rearranged all the way down at the quantum scale, all the way up to your level of perception and the geometric patterns that are taking place in the brain. And so then the way you navigate the world is also different. Yeah. And so as a parent, maybe before you did yoga, or me before I went on my journey, yelling was, part of life because I was overstimulated, I was frustrated, I was overwhelmed, all these things. But then as you rearrange the molecules and the templates change, it just, there's no effort to not yell. It is just a way of being, and the conversation or the relationship to other people then shifts, and they shift in relationship to you. And so just this Kundalini practice that you're explaining, I don't do Kundalini, but I have been tempted to several times. But just this practice you're explaining quite literally has the power to change your entire experience.
It absolutely does. Yes, absolutely changes your entire experience. And yes, it goes molecular, and it does, it rearranges the molecules. Again, the galactic teachings are inside of the yoga, but my foray into it incorporates a lot of other kinds of teachers and people. So there was a woman who I was curating into a particular program, and she was a light language channeler. And I said, and this was a women's empowerment program that I was curating. And so I always like to teach people something so that they can do it on their own, that people feel like this isn't something outside of me, this is something I can do myself. So I said, would you be able to teach light language for this, for your, presentation? And she said, no. And I was like, no, what? And I said, okay, why not? And she said, well, before you can speak and receive light language codes, you have to go through a real deep DNA reconfiguration process. And I said, oh, okay, well, can you do like a healing layout where you help the women reconfigure their DNA? And she said, yes, absolutely, we'll do that. So we did that, but it was a very interesting. No, I'd never heard that before. And so with Kundalini Yoga, we are definitely rearranging the molecules, but we're always in service to rearranging the molecules according to your original template. So we're never, and to any archetype you want to wear. So there's definitely like warrior templates in Kundalini Yoga, strong warrior template. There's a strong purity template. It's true. Some people don't dig that part, but it's there. But they're optional. You don't have to do those things. Always, though, we are programming your molecules to be back in the template of your original DNA, your original psyche, and which is your original soul vibration. So that's always going to be a good ride.
And the original soul vibration does include like like what we've just been unpacking for the last couple of minutes has been like the way in the perception expanding and communicating with the environment on all levels of scales so that those programs can be interchangeable. So you're not like overstimulated, yelling at your kids and being like, oh, what just happened? What did I just do? I just chose an expression that isn't really me, but I didn't have a choice. But the more you expand out and you get dexterity with these aspects of fractals, so you're in these aspects of fractals of embodiment, you can then expand the lens and say, oh, I want to choose this spicy template. I'm choosing this in my interactions with the world. And experience becomes not so much like the same particle coming out of the wave, but you can really design this giant experience of 360 where you're just more embodied and you have more choices. Sometimes I think that the healing journey involves awareness kind of at its having awareness for everything around and having awareness in your body through experiencing things, you know. So it does give you that access to the programming that works with your original template you came here to experience.
Yeah, totally. It definitely works with awareness. I will also say that it's a real nervous system strengthener and it strengthens the nervous system. This is one of the things I think for some people they start Kundalini yoga and then they are like, I don't want to do that anymore. And I think what ends up happening is the nervous system hits a certain level of electrical pulse and they're not comfortable to go beyond that. And Kundalini Yoga definitely pumps the electrics. That is a major, major difference in the yogas. And it challenges you. And this is another thing people don't love to be challenged sometimes, but if you can hold the electrics and hold more and more electricity, you're gonna have strong nerves so that when you get that impulse, like somebody, said something to me that I honestly I took as an insult. And because I took it as an insult, right, perception, it triggered certain kinds of like glandular responses in me. And then I had to keep it together because I couldn't tell this person off. And so, but I had the nervous system to work with that electrical impulse. I want to tell this person off right now. I want to tell this lady to go F herself and just like take a hike. I don't need to ever talk to you again. But I don't actually mean that. I don't actually want to say that. So in order to, because the response isn't different yet, the initial response is still, I'm responding with aggression, but I have the nervous system capability to hold it, as opposed to I don't have the nervous system to hold it. So now I'm just, if a lot of dudes, they're just slugging each other because they don't have the nervous system to, it's not necessarily control yourself, but they don't have the nervous system to command, okay, that impulse is going off. I'm not going to choose that. I don't have the nervous system calibration. They don't have the nervous system calibration to choose differently. So Kundalini Yoga also continuously runs more and more electricity through your system in order to strengthen the amount of electricity that you can hold. So one, you can also hold massive, way more joy, because that's a crazy high vibration, way more love, way more wealth, way more prosperity. And also, when the going gets tough, you hold way more challenge and you don't flip out because you can just like contain, metabolize.
So
Yeah. And what I hear you, oh, sorry, Lauren, go ahead.
I was going to talk about living hormetically, right? Hormesis. You're striving for homeostatic, like being able to be hormetic and be flexible. And in that flexibility, it's basically Tantra, living tantrically. You're not necessarily swinging the pendulum from one side all the time, like, or the other side. It's Tantra. And it's like finding that hormetic balance where you can respond. So if you go into a cold tub, for example, you're like, holy shit, this is cold. And you could freak out, or you could allow your body to acclimate tantrically and just find the hormetic. That's because that's why you're doing it anyway, right? If you're going into a cold tub to like excess, you're creating hormesis. So it is working with the nervous system, riding that edge, being comfortable riding that edge so that you don't freak out when you fast, you don't freak out when you feast, you don't freak out when you're in darkness or lightness,
Right.
at high noon, you're not freaking out because you hermetically set yourself up. So it's basically living a tantric life.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Highlight, yeah. Kelly, what were you going to say?
Just that what you're talking about, what I hear is it's the I am or the now. It's the living in the now moment, right? Which is what we're trying to achieve through the process of unburdening the heart, getting to love. But what I also recognize is that people who aren't comfortable with their own anger are the ones that I could see getting to that edge of the cliff and backing off, because the electrical potential of anger is so intense and it's so uncomfortable that, when you reach that point where you have to accept it and feel it and kind of be tantric with it, ride the wave, it is super uncomfortable. And so we have a society full of people that are people pleasers, or, have all these coping strategies that keep them safe from feeling or experiencing the emotion of anger.
Yeah, it's really like I it's we're going through like a really gorgeous time on Earth, I think. You know, a lot of collective evolution around, having boundaries, staking your worth, not putting up with the same kinds of abuse that we've seen for a really long time. At the same time, we do need more skills, more coping skills, especially around anger. It's something I talk about actually a lot. And sometimes I listen back to my classes and I'm like, am I going too hard on this topic? But there's quite a number of breath work and postural practices in Kundalini Yoga that are for detoxing rage in the moment, detoxing long-term held rage. One of my favorite, it's called conquering inner anger and burning it out. And I would do it. My brother, my family is wonderful. They're all, people are people. But there was one family member, an in-law, who anytime he said something to me, I was just like, I hate this. I effing hate this guy. And I would like have to run back to my room and do my rage meditation. Just, is that his fault? What did he do wrong? He like looked at me sideways, like he didn't do anything wrong. Whatever it is, opened up something for me. I had to go and metabolize that, to metabolize that anger. Being even comfortable saying that you're angry, I think, is a huge part of this evolution, because most people or wear a mask, and the mask is, covers a variety of things. A big thing that it covers, though, is being angry. And people are like, I'm not angry. I'm never angry. It's like, that just isn't true. And to the degree that you keep participating with that falsehood is the degree to which you will not be able to metabolize and work through it and then come with reality. You will never come back to reality, be able to have a real conversation if you keep saying, like, you're not an angry person. It's like, let's just be done with the pretense, admit it, and move through it. And then we can get real with each other, and then we can get cute. There's one more thing I wanted to say about that in terms of yeah, in terms of the anger and the detoxing of it, but now I can't remember. It's fine.
If you're afraid of feeling the anger, you're actually afraid of feeling the joy too. Like you said, you won't be able to get to that other, like,
Or the
a
power, or this was the thing, it was about being able to then articulate the true boundary, as opposed to like, I have boundaries and I demand respect, which is a total stepping stone. But if we could just go into like the real rage and the real anger, safely work it out through the breath, and then start to understand what's underneath that. What are we really talking about? What are we really talking about? Then you can give the real feedback. And then we can have a real conversation. And then that's working with power.
I have a question for you, since you've mentioned DNA and anger. So, how about epigenetically? How about generationally, this kind of righteous anger or this rage that has been passed down generationally, for especially for women?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's really heartbreaking. This moment in time is so beautiful and gorgeous as we melt down. And at least, there's a lot of anger and rage all over the internet and in the politics and in the social politics. And it's very uncomfortable for me personally sometimes. I'm like, I don't love this, but I think it is a messy part of the process as people start to, at least it comes to the surface that you're mad about something. And certainly you're speaking, I think, Kelly, to this part where women have been locked out of their anger and generationally, and it takes a huge amount of energy to reaccess that and move through it. And but we do want to move through it. And look, this is the most challenging thing I think right now on the planet is disclosure. That this is just where, for me, that's where I go to, because the more disclosure happens, the more we're seeing the true history of this planet. And the more we're seeing the true history of what has happened to humanity and human beings. And some crazy stuff has happened. Some real gnarly things have happened. Gnarly things are happening. And that does leave an imprint on the DNA. The good news is it's correctable. And it's correctable not just in one generation, but potentially in one meditation sitting. That we don't have to hang on to this. No one has to pay. Someone's got to pay for this. No, no one has to pay. No one has to be crucified. No one has to be guilted or held accountable necessarily. I believe in justice. I'm a huge believer in justice, but I also think, like, I do believe in karma. Like, I think everybody's going to get their just desserts no matter what. So whether you see it in this lifetime or it's another lifetime, like, we don't got to be the justice servers necessarily, unless that's your role, unless like you came down to serve justice from karma from past lifetimes. We don't know about this. We don't have this full story, but but the DNA is correctable in one lifetime, correctable in one yogic sitting. And that counts for both, quote unquote, the perpetrator and the perpetrated. Because if somebody's perpetrating, that's an imbalance in their DNA. So that shit's correctable as well. And I guess that is one of the reasons that propels me to continue to teach, because I actually think on a collective planetary level, these practices are critical, and they're super fun. And I have I keep a very light vibration class. I just like to have fun. I'm on my choose your own adventure. We're having fun. We're being cute. We're getting real, but like, we're creators. So I keep a lot of creation energy in my programming. But this is also like, we have so many atrocities to heal. And this thing works so fast. So many atrocities could be healed very, very quickly with a little bit of practice.
It's in terms of that's beautiful. In terms of disclosure and how we have been experiencing generationally through trauma on this realm, this planet, right? I noticed that when I work with biomagnetism, I'm working with those programs, and I'm like, okay, we need to delete that file, we need to delete that file, and that file, and that file, and then I'm like, oh my god, this is rooms full of files. Oh, we're gonna have to. I mean, this is a lot of deleting that we have to do. So I am kind of, my brain likes to jump forward, where I'm like, wait a minute, is there some sort of quantum jump that I can make, that I can make all the files not applicable anymore? Experience the disclosure, stop the patterns, and then make the quantum jump into, like, just, I don't know, torch the whole room full of files.
Yeah.
And kind of explaining it, that we do have to get to that higher vibration where, but it takes a lot of work in deleting it. You do have to go to your, office of traumas, and you're like, let's paper shred this one, let's paper shred that one. and let's reprogram this and that, and then make some room. And then all of a sudden you kind of gain momentum and you can make that quantum leap where you can heal the entire experience, but you have to go through those steps, you know?
Yeah, so yes. So yes. And this is why, like, the Tibetans particularly have this phrase, which is like, if you are lucky enough to find a body of treasure teachings such as these that can quantumly clear your life and your ancestors, genetics as well, you practice like your hair is on fire. Because even if you live to 150 years, we don't know how much bullshit you have to clean up. And so it's like, clean fast, because you're gonna come back, and the more you clean now, the better you get to come back into. And then it's like, then you don't have to do as much cleaning. you know it's like, no one wants to clean their room. We just want to go play, but like, you can't play as well if there's all this stuff hanging on you. So clear it now, and clear as much as you can. And then you'll have more joy in this present lifetime. And then when you come back, you'll have even more joy. So whether you clear your files through the quantum biology or the bioresonance, or you do it through, a quote unquote body of treasure teachings, a Dharma practice, it doesn't matter. I mean, this is the kind of thing that we started out by talking. A lot of people in the social justice landscape, they want to know, the politically correct social justice landscape, want to know about the origins of Kundalini Yoga and its lineage. And the fact of the matter is that there are, like, organizations of teachings. There's Tibetan Buddhism, there's Tantric Shaivism, there's, what Prabhupada came and founded Bhakti Yoga. So there's like Krishna consciousness. There are lineages, but in India and in the East, it's not that strict. No one really cares how you're getting to God. They just care that you're raising the Kundalini and you're clarifying your samskaras. And who cares? Who cares how you clear? Who cares if you used a Swiffer wet jet or a plain old mop to clean your floor? Is the floor clean? Because that's all we care about. So similarly, whether you use Kundalini Yoga as taught by Yogi Bhajan, or you use a different body of teachings, or you're just doing the quantum biology, it does not matter. We're just trying to clear stuff as fast as possible so that you can have a good time. And then, when you come back, you have a good time. We're just trying to have a good time around here.
I think some of the disclosure is that people, the understanding of the law of thermodynamics is like, even when you drop this body, you're continuing on, and if you have a messy room with a body, you're gonna have a messy room without a body, you're gonna have a messy room in a new body, in any sort of experience. So it's like, you can't really run from your messy room. So it is like, yeah, and you're right. You can play harder if you work hard to work through the things that are holding you back so that you can play hard.
Yeah, it's just encouragement to clear those files. It's just like, great, clear those files, clear those files. Whatever you're doing, like, clear them. Don't keep them around. Make the time. Everybody, I would imagine, in your world is making the time. That's why they're listening. So this is just affirmation and like good vibes to be like, great, you're doing good. You're doing the good work. It's good to make the time.
And when you clear a file, then you don't just automatically on autopilot yell at your kids. You make the choice not to do, the thing
Right.
that you.
Well, you have spaciousness.
Yeah.
Because you have spaciousness, and choicefulness. And, we used to talk about this a little bit. A great way to clear a ton of files is to do a workshop or a retreat, because we can go into deeper meditations and longer yoga. So we'll go into a retreat and we'll clear like a ton of files, using this metaphor. And then you get out and you're like, something missing? I don't have my bags with me, and it's like, nothing's missing. Don't add more stuff. don't go chase it down. Like it's very normal to try and chase your baggage down once you've dropped it because you're so used to carrying it around. But once you burn a file, don't try and like recreate it. It's done.
I think sometimes that's part of the process, though, is that you have to experience the clearing of the files and then the re-adding the files back, experiencing that kind of polar swing so you really get the feel of what both experiences are like. And then you can make your final decision that, like, yeah, I'm not doing this again, you know? Yeah.
Absolutely. Totally. Yeah. I'm not eating sugar again. I'm done. No,
Yeah.
I'm not really done, but
It feels sharp to me. It has like a sharpness. It just feels like an angry like rah rah rah.
yeah.
Like,
I don't enjoy it. I
grim.
mean, I
Ah,
love, like, I'll eat a caramel, but like, I'm not like, when I have it, I'm like, ah, that wasn't that great.
yeah. Yeah, it's like sensing what you're doing. Sometimes it's good to be sharp, but
Yeah.
Well, back to the geometry of it all, and when you were explaining like being in the middle of Hollywood with all the billboards and how it is essentially dulling your pineal gland, and so you're like, oh, well, I'm just gonna go shop for handbags. That's kind of what our entire experience is doing to us, is dulling those sensations, right? And so when you eat the chocolate or the caramel, when you have dulled sensations, you get a massive spike and it's very noticeable. And that's since you're so dull and bland, that spike you get from the caramel is super enjoyable. I mean, you know what I mean? Like you're getting that dopamine rush from it. But when you're not walking around dulled or numbed out all the time, that massive spike, like Lauren called it, very spiky, you don't need that. And it doesn't feel good when it happens, right? Like I don't know. I think I just repeated everything you just said, and I thought I had a point to it, but it's
no,
gone now.
I can't remember who it was, but I think it was in The Secret Life of Plants, but I can't guarantee it. I love food as medicine. I think we've gone way beyond that in a certain realm. But one thing that was really like stuck out to me in this particular book that I read, it was something about how like we we only hear the really loud plants like a psychotropic mushroom or, a cayenne pepper. We only plants are talking to us all the times, but we can't all the time, but we don't hear it. We only hear it when we take a psychotropic mushroom. In fact, eating a carrot can be just as psychotropic
Mhm.
when you get to a sensory point because you're like, whoa, that geometry was wild. I had this experience. This was funny. I had this experience. I was recently in Puerto Rico, which is where my matrilineal line comes from. And it's really amazing because I'm a big believer in, first of all, natural indigeneity to Earth. Like, I don't care like where you come from, you're indigenous to somewhere, and that also that you can key code into the land anywhere. So like no one has to go back to Africa. Like we do not, no one has to go back to Ireland or like, Lithuania. Like we can all live. It's okay. Everything's fine. And we can heal. And there's all kinds of healing that needs to happen. But like, I don't believe everybody has to go back to their like motherland, but it was a really interesting thing because you can key code anywhere and go back into an earth-based relationship. But it was a very interesting thing being back in Puerto Rico with my mom, with my grandmother, and feeling the resonance with that particular island. And then I had like a lime, and the geometry of the lime totally blew my mind. It was crazy. It blew my mind to such a degree that I was wearing a bathing suit and like my bra popped off. I was just with my mom and my kids. It wasn't that big of a deal, but I was like, woo! And it's like, bing! And I was like, wow, that was hot. That's how like crazy, like a lime in Puerto Rico is so different from the lime I get at the Whole Foods in Los Angeles. It's like the geometry can be so profound when we start to clarify ourselves and be able to feel it and be able to listen to it. That carrot is just as psychotropic. That lime was just as much of a high. That's how much of a geek I am. I'm like, cigarettes, why? Tobacco in itself is its own geometry that's amazing. I mean, that's what you really get when you smoke cigarettes. You get the geometry of the tobacco, which is fucking great. But, it's not about a nicotine fixation. It's about the geomantic relay between the cells and the plant. That's really quite exquisite.
Well, speaking to that, when you were talking about because you live in a quieter neighborhood and I live in a louder neighborhood. So I am in that loudspeaker geomancy of the city and I quite enjoy it, but from the artist's perspective, because it doesn't make me want to go buy a handbag. It makes me want to design 10 handbags. And I'm literally like in an apple orchard of ideas. And I'm like, oh my God, look at that one. Look at that one. Look at that one. Look at that one. I could create so much. This is so exciting. When I lived in New York, I was like steeped in it. And I was like, how do people live in the middle of nowhere? This is so much fun. Like there are ideas. This is a cornucopia of fruited ideas, just like for the picking everywhere. So sometimes you can just sort of look at it that way.
Well, I do love shopping. So let's
Well,
just
I
be
mean, no, I mean, I'm creating, creating it. Like,
just to
I
be clear.
want to
But yeah,
create it where I'm like, get me some fabric, get me some thread, get me a
right,
scissors. Right now, I can see it all.
totally. Oh, you can see it. I see the dress. I'm gonna No, for sure.
And
Yes, there
and
is a cornucopia of sounds and sights. I mean, I miss New York City. I do love, I am more of a nature baby for sure. Like I definitely just like want to be one with the trees. And even living in this quiet enclave of LA, I'm like, it's too much city. Take me to the earth. But I mean, there's not a lot going out. I need the economy of a big city and I like to, I'm in business. We've got businesses to run. That happens in the city. Businesses happen in the city.
yeah, but I am still, even in the throes of the city, I have my rose bushes and I have dialogue with them. And then I think to myself, am I being crazy? No, they're literally talking to me. Like the trees. I have a grandfather tree on the block and he's like, I'm the boss of the block, just so you
Oh
know.
yeah. Oh yes. Oh my God, I can't believe he told you that. Yes, there's always a grandfather or grandmother tree in every, I can't remember if it's like square mile or a square half mile. It's the biggest one and there's always a wow, like yeah, that's always the case. Yeah. But he just
Happen,
told you.
whether it's a lime or a tree, it doesn't really matter if you're anywhere in the light and sound of this whole cosmos, whether
Yeah.
it's nature, the city, it's still happening.
Yeah, totally. No, I'm totally with you. There is a lot that you can get, just the geomancy of human creation. I do love human creation and will always value you know, I love what humans create, even when they create something horrible. I still think it's amazing. I'm like, wow, you did that. You're awesome.
This has been such an amazing and expansive conversation. I always love talking to you, and you just connected so many dots for us all, guys. I hope you got all the dots connected.
Yeah, I really like the addition of the geometric patterns and how that plays out in the body. I think that's a great visual, help people understand maybe, people who didn't know anything about Kundalini or whatever. I think that is a fantastic addition to it.
And it pairs so nicely with your quantum lifestyle, kind of a no-brainer.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being with us today, and we'll have to have you come back sometime and join us maybe on a bigger roundtable with another person to discuss this in greater detail.
That'd be fantastic. Thank you, ladies.